Hi, my name is Kobe.
Hello, I'm Vanessa.
Hi, my name's Mia.
And welcome to the Couch Potato Lab, where we bring the science to your own home. So today's episode is going to be biology filled with a whole bunch of information, and without biology, biologists would have no job. So I brought two of my favorite biologists today, and to my left, we have...
Hello, my name is Vanessa. My pronouns are she and her, and a fun fact about me is that I love spicy food. Even a food that isn't spicy, I will add hot sauce to it to make it spicy.
Oh my gosh. That is horrible. My name is Kobe. I'm your host for today. My pronouns are he and him. And although I don't like spicy foods, I really like ketchup. So boy, oh boy, I'll spread that condiment everywhere, like my omelets, my eggs, what else? My ramen, my noodles. Sure, ketchup is the bomb. And last but not least, our other favorite biologist to my right, we have...
Hi, my name is Mia. My pronouns are she, her. And a fun fact about me is that my favorite thing in the whole entire world is Slurpees. And I probably have about one a day, which is not
Oh
very
my gosh,
good.
do you get
But
brain freezes all the time?
no, I don't get brain freezes. But yeah, I always have one small one, not a big one, a small one.
Excellent. Before we get too into it today, we'd like to begin by acknowledging that this live stream and EYES as an organization operates on Treaty 4 land, which is the traditional homeland of the Naowak, Nakaway, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, as well as the traditional homeland of the Métis-Michif Nation. We are very grateful to share this space with these peoples and recognize the diversity among our audience who may be viewing from different numbered treaties, on other treaties made between the Crown and sovereign Indigenous nations, as well as viewers on unceded territory. We thank you all for taking a moment to recognize this with us today. Okay.
So Vanessa, let's start this off with a really cool reaction. I know you have something prepared for us today. So
I
what are
sure
you going to
do.
stir up?
We're going to start a little bit of a secret experiment. We're going to have to do some learning, but this experiment has to sit for a while, so we're just going to do something quick. Right here, oh, there's a virus on top of my beaker.
Oh
They're
no,
everywhere.
everywhere.
So we have our graduated cylinder. We're just going to be adding a few things to it. First, I'm going to put in some water. I'm going to put about half the water just so it's not sticking everywhere. So I'm just going to pour it to about there. And then I have my nice tablespoon right here. So I'm going to add a tablespoon of yeast. And I need a funnel. Good thing I have that handy dandy right there. So yes, I'm adding a tablespoon of yeast. We're going to figure out all that that does throughout this episode. We're going to be experts on yeast after that. And then here is my massive sugar. I'm just going to take also a tablespoon of that just to make this concoction extra sweet. There we go. And then I think I'm just going to mix that a little bit so that it's not so... It's kind of forming a clump. I think we just need more water on top. I think that should help. Okay, we'll do some inverting.
It's stuck. Oh no.
Come on. I don't think the yeast liked being all poured into there. That's very strange. Well, I'll give it a shake, and then we'll be adding a balloon onto it pretty soon. If we can... I have a stirring stick here. Maybe I'll try and poke that through.
All right. So while Vanessa fixes that up with a reaction for our cool reaction, we're going to talk about living and non-living things. And the world is full of many different things like us and bugs and all those crazy things that are happening. But there are things that are living and non-living, and I don't know if, am I a living thing? Am I a non-living thing? I have no idea. So what we're going to do today is talk about the characteristics of what makes things living or non-living. So I'm going to pull up my handy-dandy whiteboard and jot down, make criteria of what living things have or what characteristics they have. And my biologists will inform me about the different types of characteristics. And first but not least, let's talk to Vanessa. What are some characteristics of living things?
Well, we're gonna get into that just a second. I just want to throw a balloon onto here because somehow I magically mixed it. It's like someone just appeared and really helped me out. Super great there. I'm just throwing a balloon on that, and we're just gonna let it sit. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna put it right here. We'll watch it throughout the episode, see what's going on, make some observations in a minute. But yes, we are ready to get into the features of living things. So there's 8 features in total. I'm an expert on the first 4, so we will start with that. So all living things are made of cells. That's the first one, our baseline. And what cells are the tiniest parts of us and of every living thing on the planet. They're the smallest units of life. So cells still have things inside of them like biomolecules, elements, organelles, all of those fun things, but those things can't survive on their own and do things that life does. So a cell can, and it is the smallest unit of life. Organisms that are only one cell are called unicellular organisms, and then any organism that is 2 cells or bigger, it can be a million billion cells, that is called a multicellular organism. Yes.
Right, so that's number 1. Right here, I marked it down. Made of cells is the first criteria to be a living thing. Our second criteria, what would that be, Vanessa?
So our second criteria also has to do with cells, because we mentioned multicellular organisms, but it can't just expect to have millions of cells all together and it be an organism. It needs to have order. So that's our second feature of all living things. They all have order. What that means is that there's an organization to their bodies and to how they operate. So it starts off in our cells. There are the parts of the cell called the organelle, and those are just the tiny parts of the cells. They all have special jobs for the cell. The next level is the cell itself. So that's the smallest unit of life, like we were saying, and it is operating and it's doing its job for our bodies, and they're all working together. And when they're working together in one special job, they have a tissue. So that is the next level. It's tissues, and then all the tissues can work together to make special organs. You've probably heard that word before. An organ is a big part of your body that has a very special job in your body, like your heart or your brain or your lungs, things like that.
Cool.
That's the second one.
All right, I know that we talked about many types of organs in past episodes, so if you're interested in that, you can check out episode 6 for like the respiratory system, episode 15 for the digestive system, and episode 17, the muscular and skeletal system. So those are all organs, and we go in depth with like cool activities, so check that out. So I have it right here, number 2 on our list. Vanessa, what is number 3?
Number 3 is very important. It is that all organisms and all living things can reproduce, and they have DNA, because you need DNA to reproduce. So inside our cells, that's where the DNA is. DNA carries all the information that cells need to do all of their jobs. So one cell, it's DNA in there. That is what's telling it how to do its job. And it's also what your parents passed on to you. So when you were made, there was just one cell. That's all you were, one tiny cell. And then that cell had everything, all the information needed to make you. So that's also why, since it came from your parents, that you might look like your parents. For example, if your dad has blue eyes, you might have blue eyes, things like that. And that's the third one. And then we'll just get into our fourth one. It's very, very, very related. So all living things grow and develop. And that is very important because humans start out as one cell, like I said, and then you grow into a baby, and then you're a toddler, and then a kid, and then a teenager, and then an adult, and then you get to be old and wise and wrinkly. So that is the fourth feature of all living things. And that's what I'm an expert on. I know Mia is an expert on the other 4.
Yes. So number 5 of these criteria would be we need to use and we require energy. So we require energy because we need nutrients. Some organisms need light and water and different stuff like that. But we also use it with metabolism. So metabolism lets energy be produced and with cellular processes. So everyone has their metabolism, and that's how we use our energy.
Oh, so I know that for metabolism, it breaks down things really, really quickly. So when I eat, I have a really high metabolism, and I like burn all the things that I eat, and I just maintain my weight. So that's like the similar what you're talking about, right,
Yes,
Mina?
exactly. So your body is using the energy with your metabolism, and it's breaking up all of your molecules inside.
Okay, perfect.
So our next one is respond to stimuli. So we can respond to stimuli external and internal. So our external one has to do with the environment. So something that happens around you. For example, the temperature. Let's say it's like really, really cold in here. Then you're going to adapt and you're going to maybe put on a sweater and do something about that stimuli.
Or shiver furiously.
Yes.
Like that.
Too.
Nice.
And then our internal one is something that happens inside the body. For example, if you eat something and then it ends up not being so good for you and you have food poisoning, then that's your body way of saying that maybe that wasn't the correct thing to eat, or maybe it had gone bad.
All right. And what is the last one, Mia?
Then we have two more.
Oh. Oops, my bad.
We have to maintain our internal balance with homeostasis. So basically, our body inside has to monitor what's happening and make sure that our water balance is good, our hormones are level, and everything is stable. Because if something goes out of balance, like say we get a disease or something, then our immune system needs to fight it off, and that helps keep our homeostasis. And then our last one is evolve over time. So this has to do with natural selection. And basically just over time, an organism will change based on its environment, just to better adapt to whatever is in the world.
Thank you, Mia. So I made a beautiful checklist, or the criteria of what makes things living or non-living. And these 8 characteristics is what make organisms a living thing. Yeah, so we got made out of cells. And if you want to learn more, we actually covered a majority of these in past episodes. So for example, the first characteristic about being made out of cells, we have a cell episode where we talk about plants and animal cells and all the nucleus and stuff like that. And that is episode 11, so check that out. Another one is DNA. Love DNA. It's an acronym, big words. If you want to check that out, check out episode 4. We extract DNA from a banana, and it's really, really, really cool. Last but not least, you want to know about evolution? Yes, well, Vanessa did an amazing explanation about evolution and adaptation in episode 14, Polar Bear Jacket, and it's a great one, so check that out as well. So these things are for living organisms, but what makes things non-living? And Mia has the answer to that question. Mia.
Yes. So non-living things will not have all of these 8 characteristics. It could have 1 or 2 of these characteristics, like maybe it can move or something, but it will not be able to reproduce, breathe, and many other characteristics there. It also probably won't have our 5 senses that we have, so it's not going to be able to monitor things as well.
Thank you, Mia. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I think it's important to maybe talk about some examples of living and non-living. So first, let's talk about just a random thing and figure out if it's living or non-living by going through this criteria. So I'm going to grab one of my friends, Potato Potato, from the couch over there. Everyone say hello to Potato Potato. Hello.
Welcome, Potato Potato.
All right, now the real question, the question of life. Is Potato Potato a living thing? All right. First, Vanessa, is Potato Potato made out of cells?
It definitely is. Potato Potato is absolutely made out of cells.
All right. So it's made out of cells. Does it have order, Vanessa?
Yes, it absolutely does. The potato potato's cells will organize themselves even into different tissues, because if you look at potato potato, it's got like a darker outside skin layer with some hair, and then the inside, if we know what potatoes look like cut up, it's lighter and it's different. So yes, there's even 2 different tissues in potato potato.
All right. They have order. Can they reproduce? And do they have DNA?
They absolutely do. Since they have cells, they have DNA, and they reproduce through the eyes of the potato. So those little nubs on the potato is where they would make a new potato from.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. And last but not least, for our 4th category, grow and develop. Do potatoes grow and develop?
Absolutely. Potatoes do grow and develop because they start off from the eye of the potato, and then they grow bigger into a bigger potato and one that we can eat. So yes.
Ooh, my favorite's mashed potatoes. Should I eat potato?
Mm,
Maybe not. Right? Because
Not
potato
that one.
potato's
No.
my best
Yeah,
friend.
it's your
Yeah. All right, Mia. Do potatoes use and require energy?
Yes, they do. They use sunlight, which requires energy, or water to grow.
I see. Do they respond to stimuli? So if I poke it, will it like react or something like that?
Yeah, it will be able to like let's say that there's no more sunlight. Well, then it will react to that, and maybe it won't grow as well as it could grow, or
Mm.
stuff like that.
All right, so that's the type of stimuli you're talking about. I see.
Hmm.
Maintain homeostasis. Oh, do they maintain homeostasis, Mia?
Yes, they do maintain homeostasis. So if there is a disease or something, then it has their immune system and it can try to fight it off.
Oh, just like us. Hey,
Yeah.
so potatoes also have an immune system. That's cool. Last but not least, evolve. Do they have an evolution line or something like that? Do they evolve?
Well, there are many different potatoes and many different colors. So yes, they do evolve. Yeah, and they have different colors.
Oh, I know, because there's like yellow ones and red ones and russet brown ones. So there are different types of potatoes, and they are probably adapted well to different environments. So they evolved over time, and before you know it, there's lots of different colored potatoes. We went through a living thing, so it checked out all the checklists for the criteria of living things. But how about a robot? Mia, I see that there's an orange robot right there you have. Is that a
Mhm.
living thing as well?
Well, this is a robot and its name is Edison, but
Has a name.
it's not living.
It's not living.
No.
All right, let's double check and go through our checklist, a handy dandy checklist, to see if they are living or non-living. So Vanessa, are they made out of cells?
No, they are not made out of cells. Edison has some plastics, some elements, atoms, molecules, things like that, but no cells like we might have.
All right. Order. Do they have order? Vanessa.
Well, Edison has different parts in itself, and it's orange, and it has lots of different things. So you could say it might have order, but not in the way like we do with tissues and organs and things like that.
Can Edison bots make babies and have DNA?
Edison bots don't have any DNA, unfortunately. They would be produced in a factory, maybe, but not like we're used to. So no.
I see. All right. Grow and develop. Can robots grow and develop into bigger robots?
Kind of. It would probably need a human's help to get things added onto it, but not in the way by itself. Like it couldn't just get taller like a human might.
So it would require like us to like add building blocks to it for it to grow, but it can't grow by itself. All right, thank you, Vanessa. Back to Mia. Are you ready? Does it
Yes.
use and require energy?
Well, this robot would use energy because it would use batteries, but of course that's a different type of energy than what an organism usually uses.
I see. All right. Respond to stimuli.
Well, this robot has some senses, which is unusual for robots. So if I clap, it can hear it and it should be able to move. Let's see if it happens.
Oh my gosh! It responds to stimuli. Oh, Mia. So the robot can respond to stimuli, and it can it uses energy, requires energy. Can it maintain homeostasis, Mia?
It cannot maintain homeostasis. There's nothing inside that's going to keep anything stable.
I see. Last but not least, can robots evolve?
Well, robots could evolve if a scientist makes different types of robots and sees things and can adapt to it to make it a better robot. But this Edison bot probably will not evolve like that.
As you can see that we talked about these criterias, and the robot doesn't meet all of these characteristics. It has a few of them, like it uses and requires energy, it responds to stimuli, it has order, but like it's not made out of cells, it can't reproduce. So because of that, robots are non-living or things. And there are a whole bunch of different living things. And the next thing that we want to talk about is bacteria and viruses. Bacteria is throughout our entire world. There's so many of them, and they're so little, but they're one of the most abundant living organisms. And they are found in like under the ocean to the insides of our body. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at bacteria and see how our body interacts with these living things. Because there is some misconception that bacteria might be bad. They're all bad and they're here to like get rid of us, and that might not be true. And because they are really beneficial for us as well. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to be playing the role of immune system. And Vanessa and Mia are going to introduce some bacteria and see if these bacteria would be helping or not helping the immune system. So, Vanessa, what do you have for the immune system today?
Well, I have this beautiful bacteria right here. I'm going to call this bacterio. And Kobe, maybe instead of potato, this one can be your new best friend. So to become Kobe's best friend, I'm going to need to plead my case as bacterio. So Kobe, I'm going to sneak into your body through some food that you're going to eat. And when I get in there, I'm going to live in your small intestine, and I'm going to help you. If you eat something that you can't digest, maybe it's too big, too tough, it's going to come to me. I'm going to eat it, take a little bit for myself, give a little bit to you. We're going to have a great relationship called a symbiosis, where we both benefit. So here it comes. I'm going to toss it to you. I hope we can be best friends.
Bam. All right. I'm assessing this bacteria. Choo, choo, choo. All right. I'm allowing entry. This bacteria can enter my small intestine. And before you know it, I'm feeling great. So what happens is that these good bacteria will join our gut microbiome. So this is our little population of good bacteria in our stomach, in our small intestine, that helps us with our bodily functions like digestion. So there are a lot of good bacteria in our bodies. Yeah. So bacterio is one of my new best friends. All right, Mia, what do you have for me today?
I have this beautiful blue bacteria named Beautiful Blue, and I just really need a place to live and just reproduce, and I really feel like Kobe's body would be the perfect place to keep reproducing my bacteria there. And so I'm really hoping that Kobe, you'll allow my bacteria to come and live with you.
All right, let's see. Thank you. I'm assessing. I'm like a little suspicious of this bacteria. I'm going to allow its entry into my body, and I'll have it reside in my stomach and small intestine to join bacterial. And dun. This is bad. Oh my gosh, what is happening to me? I feel so sick. So what's happening is that these bacteria are also called pathogens if they are bad. So what pathogens do is that they infect our bodies, they try to get into our bodies, and the main purpose for them is to grow and develop and invade our system, use it as our home, grab all the nutrients in our bodies, and reproduce. So it has a big, giant family. And fortunately, these bacteria also produce toxins that are being released into our bodies and make us really sick. So pathogens like these are a no good thing. Dun. Bad. Now I'm feeling sick, so the immune system will now react and try to fight it off, so it's removed from our body, and we can become healthy once again. Vanessa, I see that there is another candidate to they want to enter my body. Is that true?
Yes, it is. So this is the virus. Its name is Virus Viroso. That'll be its name. We're very creative today. This virus, the case that I'm going to plead for this virus will be that it's going to come and be a good friend to your cells. Definitely. It's going to attach to your cells. It's going to share all the food that you make. It's going to share your reproductive areas in your cells so that it can also reproduce, and then you can have even more friends for your cells. It's going to be great.
Wow, sharing is caring.
Here
hey?
it comes.
Thank you. All right, I'm assessing, and it just enters my body. Oh no, what is happening? Dun dun dun. All right, so viruses, they are bad sometimes. And what happens is that viruses hijack our cells, and they kind of, in order to do that, they kind of like stick themselves in cells, inject their viral particles into our cells to hijack it. And because of their hijack, they are able to produce more viral particles, and that's how they reproduce. Unfortunately, that means that I can become really, really sick from these viruses, and that is not great. But the real question is, we know that bacteria are living things because they have cells. Viruses, on the other hand, they are non-living. Yeah, but I'm not too sure. So what I think we need to do is to pull out my handy-dandy whiteboard once again and go over the living characteristics criteria. All right, first things first.
The whiteboard.
The whiteboard.
There's the
Are
list.
they made out of cells, Vanessa?
They are not made out of cells. They are made of these things that kind of resemble cells, like prions, variolas, that kind of stuff. Virions, that's the word. I forgot it exactly, but virions is the word. So no, they're not made of cells. Kind of like cells, but not really.
Do they have order, Vanessa? Do viruses have order?
Kind of. If you see the virus, it has like a head, some legs. So viruses will have different parts, but it's not really order like we would consider in living things. So no, not really.
Not really. Can virus particles and virions reproduce, and do they have DNA?
So they do have DNA, but they can't reproduce by themselves. They can reproduce with the help of cells that are living, but not alone. So in general, no, they can't reproduce unless they have help.
Perfect. Viruses, can they grow and develop?
No, so they just replicate themselves. So the word reproduce is kind of misleading because they're just kind of making copies all the time. They just replicate themselves, and they don't grow really, no.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. Mia, do viruses use and require energy?
Yes, they do require energy because they hijack your healthy cells and then they take over. And so, yes, they do.
All right. Do viruses respond to stimuli?
This is actually unknown. We do not know if they do respond to stimuli.
I see. Do they maintain homeostasis?
They don't have any way of controlling their inner body, and so, no, they do not have any type of homeostasis.
All right. Last but not least, do viruses evolve like other organisms?
Yes, they do evolve by mutating.
Ooh. So what do you remember what mutation is, Mia?
Well, basically, it is like we'll have a virus, and then over time it will adapt to the environment, and it will be able to change and make different variations of that virus.
All right. So as you can see, this virus doesn't check out all the criteria or checklists of this living characteristic criteria. So unfortunately, viruses are non-living organisms. And if you're interested in the immune system and bacteria and viruses and all that, check out one of our upcoming episodes on the immune system, which is going to be a great episode. There are a lot of living and non-living things on Earth, but I'm wondering about space. Does space have any living and non-living things, which I'm really, really curious about? And I know our biologist, Vanessa, has the answer to that. Vanessa, what did you research on?
I sure do have the answer. So space is very, very interesting, but we have to understand that we know what life looks like on Earth, and we've known for a long time. It's been able to grow and evolve for millions, even billions of years. So life on Earth has been around for a very long time. We know what it looks like. We also used to know what it looked like, and then we had our set ideas years and years ago, and then life was actually found in boiling water in Yellowstone National Park And then we had to re-examine what we really thought life was all about and what its features are. So life has had to be re-examined before, because sometimes life that we find breaks our ideas and we have to change, and it's okay to change once you learn something new. So that could happen again, because we have to think about if there could even be life in space. We haven't found too many concrete, solid evidences of life on other planets. But if we think about this example, so let's say we take all of our coworkers, everyone at the University of Regina, and we put them all in a stadium. It would be if you had a really unique name, it would be kind of rare that someone else would have your name. We have a fun example though, actually. So our boss, Megan, her name is Megan Moore. That's her name. And there's actually someone else who works at the university with the exact same name, spelt the exact same way. So it happened, even though her name with her last name would be totally unique, there's someone else with the same one just in the university. So if we take that concept and we put maybe 1 million people in a stadium, someone's name with their last name could be really unique and never seen before, but there's probably someone else who has that same name. So if we think about how rare, how unique life is and how it developed on Earth, and we think about how many planets there are in our galaxy, which it's estimated to be from 100 billion to 400 billion planets, which is a lot, there is probably life somewhere. But the issue is that we don't know what it would look like, because we know how it's evolved on Earth and we know what it looks like on Earth. But in space, it could be completely different, that we might even miss it. The way that we look for it now is that we look for biosignatures. So biosignatures are things that would provide us evidence of current, so right now there's life on the planet, or past, so there used to be life on the planet. The biosignatures are things like elements, so that's something from the periodic table. It's just one atom big. An isotope, which is similar to an element, so it's from the periodic table, but it's a little bit different. It has something extra, or it's missing something. And we also look for molecules. Molecules are elements together, hanging out, making a molecule. So that is how we would find life, and we also have to decide and think about what kind of life we'd be finding. So we could find in space microbial or intelligent life. So microbial life would be like bacteria, things like that. They're just tiny, one cell, couple cells, things like that. Still life, it's just smaller, and we often are wanting to find intelligent life. So intelligent life are organisms and beings that can learn and can grow and can understand and think. So that would be things like us, dolphins, dogs, stuff like that. So hopefully one day we're going to find some life in space. That would be very, very cool, but we might not know what it looks like, and we might have missed it already. So we keep on searching. The journey continues.
Did you hear that? Aliens may exist and we don't know. Oh gosh. So there are a lot of mysteries and questions we have about the world we live in and also space. So please send in your questions, because the Hayes brothers sent us a really very good question right here. Do adult brains have more cells than kids' brain? And how many cells do we have in our brains? Mia, the biomedical biologist, knows the answer. Mia, what is the answer to that?
All right. Well, first off, we have 1 to 5 trillion cells in our brains.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of cells.
Yes. And adults and youth have the same number of cells, but it just depends on the connections of the synapses to the brain. So just that number changes. So just different connections that change.
Oh, I know that when you grow older or when you learn new things, there are lots of connections happening in our brain. So although the number of cells remain the same for us, the connections that develop over time becomes more wrinkly, makes our brain a little bit more wrinkly and makes us more developed. I see. Good question, Hayes brothers. Thank you so much for that. Next thing is that living things and non-living things, there's so many of them that some scientists we haven't discovered yet, and we are scared of the unknown. And when we find something new or discover something new, scientists like to name and classify them. So for living organisms, there is a kind of like a structure on how to classify and name those living organisms. And they go D, K, P, C, O, F, what's the other one? G and S. And here's an example of So D equals domain, K is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's how we name organisms. And for humans, the full name for a human is Eukarya, Animalia, Chordata, Mammalia, Primate, Hominidae, Homo sapien. So we already know that the scientific name for humans are Homo sapien, and that we're just using the genus and species level for naming. Yeah, and a really easy way to remember all of that is this acronym that I learned in school. So, did Katy Perry come over for good sushi?
Did
I
you?
don't know. Did she? Did she? I don't know. So, each letter of that sentence represents like another letter, right? So, did D domain. Yeah. Katie, K, kingdom. So that just helps me out if you are learning about classification in your biology class. So hopefully that will be a cool thing to remember. And a really cool thing is that for domains, those like levels are split into more levels. So domain, there are 3 levels. There's bacteria, eukarya, and archaea. And that is separated with prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotes don't have a nucleus, so that would be the archaea and the bacteria. And eukarya has a nucleus, so that would be like us. And a really cool thing is that archaea are like really, really small organisms that can live in extreme environments. So another name for that is extremophiles. So they can live in like volcanoes and like thermal vents under the ocean. Yeah, so it's really, really cool. All right, it is time. Mia and Vanessa, we learned a lot about living and non-living things, but the real question is yeast living or non-living? Is sand living or non-living? It boggles my mind, really. So for this activity, we're gonna go right into it. Mia, what are the materials that we need for this activity?
All right. So in 1 cup, I have 1 tablespoon of yeast. In another cup, I have 1 tablespoon of sand. And then you're going to need a sugary substance. So I'm going to be using ginger ale.
Ooh, you're gonna use ginger ale. Ginger ale is a great choice for drink. I decided that I'm going to use apple juice for this. Right, there are many substitutes of what you can use. So if you don't have like apple juice or like a can of pop, Vanessa has a good solution to that.
I sure do, and it actually is a solution because we've got sugar and water in here. All of my sugar has actually dissolved, so I'm just gonna add a tad bit more and then stir it a little bit. So yes, this is sugar and water, and that is my sugary solution.
Perfect. We have yeast and we have sand, and we're going to test out if they are living or non-living, and we're going to explain about that later on if they are living or non-living. But what we're going to do now is pour about 100 milliliters in each one of our cups. So 100 milliliters of whatever solution, maybe apple juice, maybe sugary water, maybe a can of pop, into our 1 tablespoon of yeast. Wow.
Wow.
And then 100 milliliters of the same liquid into sand. And in our little experiment, scientists need to take observations. So we have to see what's going on. Take a look at what's happening to your yeast and your sand. Ooh. Mia, what's happening to your yeast and sand?
Well, my drink was a little fizzy, so there is a bit of fizz in the sand, but it has gone down very, very fast. Whereas in my yeast, there are so many bubbles that are on top of the ginger ale.
I have the same observations as well. So there's a little bit of bubbles formed when I pour the apple juice in my yeast, and there's no bubbles formed in my sand. Ooh, that's quite the mystery. Vanessa, do you see those same observations as we do?
Mine are very similar. I think my sugar solution is taking a second with the yeast, but it's making some bubbles, and my sand definitely has none. There's nothing going on in here. But yes, this one, there's lots of things going on. Things are moving around. I definitely have some bubbles.
All right, jot down your observations in your lab manual. But Mia, I'm kind of very curious. Why are there bubbles forming when we poured our drink into the yeast?
Yes. So with our yeast, we put a sugary substance in it, or you could put water and sugar. And this creates two things. It creates ethanol and it creates carbon dioxide. So right now, it's fermenting. So that means that there's no oxygen present, which is making it bubble and creating our ethanol and carbon dioxide.
Oh, all right. So you could say that this is like a chemical reaction where the reactants are the yeast and the sugar from our solution. So those are reactants. It goes through a reaction, also known as fermentation, and the products would be carbon dioxide, which is from the bubbles, and ethanol. But what allows that reaction to happen? Vanessa, you have the answer.
I sure do. So we have our yeast having an interaction with the sugar. It's beneficial for the yeast because it needs to get energy and it needs to have its metabolism going, like we were talking about in our features of living things. So what's going on is that the sugars are being used, of course, but sugars come in these long chains of sugar molecules. So they are just in long chains, and that is kind of difficult for the yeast to use. So yeast have these things called enzymes, and enzymes kind of act like scissors for the yeast to digest and use the sugar. So it is able to use its enzymes to cut, just like scissors, the chain of the sugar molecules into smaller parts so that they're just sugar molecules. And then the yeast can use that, gets energy, and releases its carbon dioxide and ethanol. Pretty cool.
All right, yeast does a lot of things with sugar, but sand. What is the sand doing? Is it doing anything at all? I don't think so.
No.
All right, so there's not much happening besides that when we pour the apple juice or whatever solution into the sand, maybe the sand turned color because it got wet. Mia, is sand a living thing or is it non-living?
Sand is not a living thing. It does not have any of the 8 characteristics that are for living things, and so it is not.
Sand, non-living. Yeast? Living? Living? All right, let's go grab our whiteboard and check if it's living or not.
Here it comes.
Here it comes. First things first. Is it made out of cells?
Yes, yeast is made out of cell, so it's a bacteria cell. Basically, yeah, it is made out of one cell.
Made out of cells because I know that yeast are like a type of what is it, Mia? Is it like a animal? Is it a plant?
Oh, it is classified as a fungi.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's a single-celled eukaryotic cell, which means it has organelles.
All right, if it has organelles, that means it has order. And because it has cells, it can reproduce and has DNA. It can grow and develop. Does it use and require energy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes, it can because it's using all that sugar and eating that up so it can grow and make lots of things happen. Does it respond to stimuli? Well, we just poured some apple juice into our yeast and it made carbon dioxide. So yes, it does. It can maintain homeostasis and it can evolve over time. But I'm curious, so it checks out all these boxes of a living thing. So yeast are a living thing. But what is yeast? Why does it exist in the world? Why do we use it? Mia, you have the answer because you are a yeast master, correct?
Yes. Well, so yeast reproduces asexually, which means that it only needs one organism to do so. So basically, it will have a parent cell and then little buds, like on the potato with its eyes. It will begin to bud, and once that matures, it will be able to detach off of the parent cell, and then that's how it makes more yeast.
Ooh.
Yes, and yeast is used a lot in bread. So when it is used in bread, it bubbles up, which then lets the bread rise, and that's why it's so important.
Yeah, it makes it extra fluffy, which is great. So there are many purposes of using yeast, and which is great. But I think it's kind of a waste that the yeast is producing so much carbon dioxide, and we're not making any use of it. What can I do? Vanessa, do you have any ideas of what we should do with that extra CO2 being made?
Absolutely. So, like we were saying earlier, when yeast gets its sugar, its enzymes cut it and it makes carbon dioxide. Our bodies actually do the same thing. So, when we eat something, our enzymes cut our food into small little particles that we can use, and we also make carbon dioxide. And that is the stuff that we are breathing out. And when we breathe out, something we can do is blow up balloons. But I'm extra tired today, so I will not be blowing up any balloons. Thank goodness we have our yeast to do so. So like we did earlier in the episode, we put this balloon on the top, and we had yeast in the bottom with its water and its sugar, and now we have a balloon on the top that got all blown up because the yeast was releasing carbon dioxide while it was eating the sugar. So we can actually use yeast to blow up our balloons for us. This one's not that big though. I wish I had a bigger balloon.
Well, Vanessa, look at this. I have a big balloon produced by this yeast mixture. So I had made two mixtures happening before the show. So one is the control variable. So this means that it has water and yeast. So we want to know what happens if no reaction occurs, to see and compare if we do add extra things. So the extra thing that we added, or the variable that we added, was sugar inside this this container. And because we added sugar, the yeast was able to digest it and produce carbon dioxide, and it blew up this big balloon. Oh my gosh, is that big? Holy cow. So that's great. So if I ever need to blow up balloons and I'm too lazy to do that, I'm just going to make a yeast mixture with sugar and water. That's going to be a fun time.
It'll do it for you. It'll be perfect.
We learned a lot about yeast now and living and non-living. I think it is time to kind of make our biologist show who is the better biologist, because it is time for the Science Showdown. For our Science Showdown, the first round we'll have Vanessa and Mia. What's going to happen is I'm going to ask a question, and the first person to raise up their hand and do a animal sound will answer the question. If they get it wrong by chance, the other person has the chance to steal. If they do get it correct, they get 1 point, and whoever has the most points at the end will proceed to the final round. Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes.
You're going down, Mia.
First question. Are viruses living or non-living?
Nay,
Oh, Mia.
they are not living.
Non-living. Very, very good. 1 point to Mia. Question number 2. What is the scientific name for humans?
Moo.
Oh, Vanessa.
It is Homo sapiens, or
Oh.
that really long one that you said earlier. But I don't know everything.
Good. I just wanted the genus and species, which is great. Nicely done, Vanessa. All right, it's tied 1-1. Final question. Why do I need yeast in my bread?
Moo.
Mia?
I changed my animal sound. You need yeast in bread because we need the bubbles for it to rise. And the reason that we have bubbles is because it ferments, which means that there's no oxygen present.
Yeah, and it makes it extra fluffy.
Yes.
Nicely done, Mia. All right, we have a champion. Mia will proceed to the next round of the Science Showdown. So in this second round, Mia is going to sit in the flaming hot chair. She's going to answer my rapid fire questions as quickly as possible. What I'm going to do is ask if certain objects are living and non-living, and Mia has to answer if they are living or non-living. Mia, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
You ready?
Yes.
Are you sure you're ready?
Yes.
All right, so there's going to be 8 things that I'm going to ask, and you're going to say either living or non-living.
Okay.
Number 1, potato.
Living.
Robot.
Not living.
Bacteria.
Living.
The sun.
No, it's not.
Yeast.
Living.
Sand.
Not living.
TV.
Not living.
Fish bait.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's like fish, there's like a living fish bait and like a fake non-living fish bait, so like I'll accept any answer. Mia got 100%. Today's
Yay!
Science Showdown winner is
Yay!
Mia. Woo! Nicely done. Dun, dun, dun. We have the winner champion right here, Mia, which is great because next segment is the STEM Spotlight. Today's STEM Spotlight is Laura Ambrose for this episode. Let's meet Laura Ambrose. Which will... All right, perfect. Thank you for that. Our STEM Spotlight was Laura Ambrose, and that was great. Next segment is our favorite, so make sure that you send in your questions. You can either text in at 306-570-1013, or you can tweet us your questions with the hashtag CouchPotatoLab.
On today's STEM Spotlight, we want you to meet Laura Ambrose. She's a sessional lecturer with Luther College at the University of Virginia.
All right, cool. All right, let's see are the questions that we got from Joe. Our first question comes from Joe. Is my dead pet guinea pig abiotic? So this is one of the terms that we mentioned in a few episodes ago, if it's non-living or living. Let's say Vanessa. Vanessa, is a dead pet guinea pig abiotic, non-living?
So Joe, technically, yes, your guinea pig would be considered biotic, so it would be considered living because it's in a different classification. So its little area under living and its organization there, it would be in the dead area, but since it had potential to live and it used to live, it is considered biotic.
They are, all right, so dead guinea pigs would be, yes, they are alive, but dead. I see. All right, next question from Alice. Thank you so much, Alice, for your question. When you plant a seed, it will grow a living plant. Does that mean seeds are alive? Oh, Mia, would you like to answer that question?
Well, yes. So seeds are alive, but they are just in a dormant state, which means that it is at a state of rest or it is inactive. So it's just not working right now, but it is still alive.
I see. All right, so it's still alive. Perfect. Seeds are alive. Next question. Does a living thing cause an allergic reaction? By McKenna. Vanessa, would you like to take that question?
Sure. So McKenna, living thing could cause an allergic reaction if you were allergic to cats or dogs. Those are alive and they might brush up on you and make your skin angry, stuff like that, or something you eat might make your making you upset and not feel very good. But it is actually your immune system and an immune response that causes the allergic reaction in your body. So it might be from something living, but the thing that causes it in your body is not living.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that answer. Nicely done. All right, our next question comes from Eli. Oh my God, there's a lot of questions today. Thank you so much for your questions. Eli asked, how many cells are in a finger? Mia, do you know the answer to that?
All right, so this one's a tough one because depending on how large your hand is or how large your finger is, it could change how many cells are in it. But what we do know is that a finger or our hand takes up 1% of our body. And so we can estimate that there are about 300 billion cells in our hand.
Oh my gosh, that's
a lot.
That's a lot. 300 million? Oh, if I had $300 million,
Billion.
that'd be great.
300
billion?
yeah.
That's even more. Holy cow. Next question. Thank you, Mina, for that. If yeast in a fungi, they must be fun at parties. From Adam.
I
Yes.
think yeast is fun at parties, especially they can blow up our balloons, so they're extra fun at parties because of
Oh yeah, there
Yep.
you go. They are the props master at the parties. Nice. Next question. Will the balloons float with CO2? From Connor. All right. Maybe I'll take this one, I think.
Okay.
So what happens is that when yeast produces CO2. It's just CO2 in the balloons. Did you know that like when we blow into the balloons, it's just CO2 as well? Unfortunately, CO2 is a little bit too heavy, so that's why when we blow up our balloons by ourselves, it drops down to the ground, so it doesn't float. You see that some balloons in like stores float up, and that's because helium is inside those balloons that allow you to float all the way up to the sky. Yeah, and helium is also the element that if you breathe in, it makes your voice really, really funny, like a mouse. Yeah. All right, and last but not least, our last question, are eggshells living?
I
From
think
Eli.
I think I could probably.
Vanessa?
I think I know. This one's kind of interesting because an eggshell would be something that would be made by a living thing, but this happens in trees, in eggshells, turtles, their shells, things like this. They probably are similar to Joe's dead guinea pig, where it was living at one point, but sometimes cells self-destruct just to take up space. Like in a tree, they have dead cells that carry the water around, but the cells don't actually need to be alive because they're just transporting stuff. So it would be similar with an eggshell, I think. We're not totally sure about this one. We can always check back in. Oh yes, okay, so we actually just got headquarters sending us the answer. Eggshells are made out of calcium, so they would be deposited by the living organism, but they aren't alive. So no, eggshells are not alive.
Thank you, Vanessa. Whoa, big round circle right there. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, this biology-filled episode. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.